Hey everyone. So we got two videos that we're watching these next 2 days. This one's going to be a little bit quicker. This video is going to talk about a technique called completing the square. What completing the square really helps us do is to solve quadratic equations without the quadratic formula. In fact, completing the square helps you derive the quadratic formula, but I'm not going to really go much into that. I'm just going to show you how to do it. The goal is to write stuff as something squared, like x minus a or x plus a squared. So I'm going to teach you how to do this without going into too much background of it. I'm also going to link a Khan Academy video just in case you want to see a little bit more of the same thing. So how we're going to do this, how you complete the square. You look at the bx term. So if we have x squared plus bx, how you complete the square is you look here. You take b, you divide it by 2. Whatever that number is, you then square it, and we're going to add that number. And that's going to allow us to complete the square. So we look at that b value, we divide it by 2, we square it, and we're going to do something with that number. So let's look at how many problems do I have. 5 of which I'm going to do 2 and then ask you to do 1, then do 1 with a leading coefficient, which makes it tricky, then ask you to do 1 as well. So how would I solve x squared minus 6x plus 4 equals 0 if I was not going to use the quadratic formula, because this thing does not factor? Here's how you do it. We're going to be doing this for our sake. You don't always have to do this, but we're going to move the constant to the other side here. So we're going to write this as x squared minus 6x equals negative 4, and you're seeing me leave a bunch of space next to that minus 6x. How do we complete the square? We take negative 6, we divide it by 2, which is negative 3. You square that number, and we add it right there. Now, think back to algebra. If I add 9 to one side, what do I have to do to the other side? We also have to add 9. That keeps things fair. Now, what is the point of all this? X squared minus 6x plus 9, that factors. That factors to x minus 3 times x minus 3, or specifically, x minus 3 squared. And negative 4 plus 9 would equal 5. From this, we could continue solving, but for this conic stuff, we're just going to actually be like writing our equations to kind of identify where centers are, where foci are, and stuff like that. We'll get to that stuff going forward. For parabolas, it's going to help us figure out where vertexes are. So I'm going to do this one more time and then ask you to try really quick. So x squared plus 10x minus 1 equals 0. So I'm going to add the 1 to the other side. You don't actually have to do this, but I like kind of just looking at it like x squared plus 10x, leave some space, is equal to 1. How do we complete the square? How do we take x squared plus 10x and write it as x plus or minus some number quantity squared? We take this value, 10, we divide it by 2, which is 5. We square that, and that is plus 25. And whatever you do to one side, you have to do to the other. How does x squared plus 10x plus 25 factor? Well, that's x plus 5 times x plus 5. So that turns into x plus 5 squared equals 26. We're not going to finish solving because the important part for me right now is writing that x plus 5 squared. Again, that's going to help us find some like vertex type stuff. Pause the video for a moment. Try to do x squared minus 2x plus 6 equals 0 on your own. Rewrite it so that we've completed the square. We've made a squared quantity. So I'm going to pause and write my answer. You should pause too and see if you get the same thing I do. All right, my hope is that you see my answer now. You were able to complete the square by getting the quantity x minus 1 squared in the problem. Now, what do we do when we have a leading coefficient? These get a little tricky, folks, so be mindful. I'm still going to move this constant term over to the other side so I don't have to think about it. 2x squared plus 12x, leave some space, equals 5. Now, here's the thing about this. You can do this by dividing everything by that leading coefficient, but that means you have to have fractions. And I know how much people generally dislike working with fractions. So what we're going to do instead is we're going to factor out that leading coefficient out of that x squared and that x term. So 2, and then I'm going to factor that out of both, leaving me with x squared plus 6x. Leave some space, put parentheses, equals 5. Okay, and at this point, kind of ignore the 2 for the moment. And we're just going to complete the square. We look at 6, we divide it by 2, which is 3, we square it. We're going to add 9 right here, inside that parentheses. Now, if you're paying attention, we're not just adding 9 to this side. So if you wrote plus 9 on the other side, you're actually going to get this a little bit wrong. Because what are we actually adding to the left side? If we were to distribute the 2, we would have 2x squared plus 12x. But then the 2 times 9 would be plus 18. So we're not adding 9 to the other side. We actually should be adding 18 to the other side. That gets a little bit tricky. What can we do factoring x squared plus 6x plus 9? Well, that's 2 on the outside times x plus 3. Quantity squared equals 23. Again, the goal of completing the square is writing that x plus or minus something quantity squared. Now, I know you just saw 1, but I think it'd be a good idea to pause and see if you do this last one correctly by yourself. I'm going to pause my video and just write the answer, so if you don't pause, the answer will be here momentarily. So for this last one, you had to factor out a 3 out of the x squared in the x term, leaving us with x squared minus 4x. Half of negative 4 is negative 2. Squaring negative 2 is plus 4. So that's where you'll see this plus 4 right there. But remember, that's inside the parentheses. And we're multiplying 3 to everything inside the parentheses. So what did we really add to the problem? We didn't really add 4 to the problem. We added 12. X squared minus 4x plus 4 factors to x minus 2 quantity squared. We got the 3 out front, and the negative 8 plus 12 is 4, so we could rewrite it like this. And that is your quick-ish lesson on completing the square. I'm also going to link another completing the square video if you feel like you don't quite have a handle on it, but we're going to be completing the square with parabolas, maybe a little bit with circles, with ellipses, and hyperbolas. So you're going to have to watch our second day video for working with parabolas, but this is going to help us do that. So see you soon.